With me now, Republican Senator Bob Corker. Thanks very much for being here. You've been meeting with French officials, U.S. officials here. What have you learned? What are you focusing on?
Well, obviously they're still concerned about things that could happen here. A big part of my trip, I'm on my way to the Middle East, but is to focus on what we do in Syria. So I met with the Minister of Defense. I'm going to meet with the equivalent of their National Security Advisor in just a few moments. But it's both about intel here, what's happening here in Paris and in France, but also what we're going to do about the situation in Syria, where the root of this is.
How is cooperation between the U.S. and France on intelligence sharing, and also cooperation within Europe itself?
Yeah, so I met with our FBI officials here and other folks involved in intelligence gathering, and the cooperation has been growing in a very good way, but especially is taking off now. I think it's going to create a whole new relationship. And it's already been good, but I think we're really going to build upon what's been occurring.
The huge influx of refugees, of migrants that we have seen over the last year coming from Syria, until the situation in Syria itself is resolved, until progress is made, there's no end in sight to that.
No question. I mean, France, of all the European countries, has more foreign fighters in Syria that obviously would come back to France at some time. Some have, as we've seen. So there's no question. I mean, as long as our strategy in Syria is containment, more and more and more of this is going to occur. And I think people are waking up to that and realizing that. I think, obviously Hollande is going to the United States on Tuesday. I just met with the Minister of Defense, who's going to be there with him. And, I think everyone understands that collectively we've got to do something far more robust. As we sit here with them contained, again, they have the ability to train, to inspire people, because they have ground that they control. So that's absolutely right.
It's also a huge concern that though the number, we're told the number of foreign fighters trying to go to Syria has dropped, the FBI said yesterday that may not be such good news, because they're actually now encouraging people to stay where they are and do whatever damage they can. If they have a car, they're being told, use that car to kill people.
Well, you've seen the public relations materials they put out is as good as published anywhere, and that is exactly right. I mean, some people aren't able to make the trip, and yet they have grievances against the countries they're in. They are inspired by what ISIL is doing, and so that's exactly the threat. That's what I think is the biggest concern right now in the United States.
What would you like to see happen in Syria? It's obviously an incredibly complex situation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different actors.
I hear politicians, and I'm one, throughout all these numbers and things. I think the first decision that has to be made is, are we as the United States going to take part, are we going to lead a coalition to actually end their existence, or are we going to just deal with the containment that we've been doing? So it's really an executive decision first, and then I think once that decision is made, it is collecting from our, great military leaders the best way to go about doing that. We as a nation really haven't made the decision yet, in my opinion, that we want to destroy them. It's been a decision to contain. You've heard, Iraq first, we'll deal with Syria later. The fact that, the robustness of what we're doing in the air, we know the air cannot end this. We all understand that. So I think, again, it's got to be a decision by the United States that, yes, this is important enough for us to end. France has got to make the same kind of decision. Other countries do. But that decision really hasn't been made, in my opinion.
And in your opinion, U.S. leadership is critical?
Absolutely. I mean, it is. You see President Hollande going to the U.S. He's going to be in Russia just a few days after. I mean, he's running around doing what you would expect him to do after what has happened here. And, what they're doing in Mali and other places. I mean, France has demonstrated leadership in multiple areas. But I think with something like this, the only way for it to be successful is with U.S. leadership.
Senator Corker, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming down. Appreciate it. Good luck to you on your trip.